Well, I said I was hoping to be in as good of spirits for this video as I was for the last. Unfortunately, that is not the case. I forgot to change the lights, but you know what? If anything, it's fitting. The St. Louis Blues, for the first time in their history, have won a game in the Stanley Cup final, beating the Boston Bruins 3-2 in overtime, tying this series up at 1 win apiece. Now, I do want to note this might be a shorter video than the last. That is not because the Bruins lost, but, you know, this time when I don't have to go on an 8-minute or so rant about officiating and how people are dumb for complaining about it, it's going to cut time off the video. Now, because of that, unlike the last video, I can actually go period by period, and we will jump right into it. First period, on the power play, Pasta in the high slot, dishes it off to DeBrusk. He goes down the wing, swings the puck out from the corner, in front to a wide-open Charlie Coyle, who beats Jordan Binnington 5-hole, and the Bruins take that 1-0 lead fairly early, but it would not last, would it? Blues tie it a few minutes later. Robert Bortuzzo throws one on. The Blues have the Bruins pinned in their own zone, which is not, unfortunately, something that was, we'll say, foreign to that game. It happened fairly regularly, but Bortuzzo on the half wall throws it in front. Looks like it deflected off of Matt Grzelcyk. Goes perfectly top corner. I mean, Tuukka is pinning the post. There's that much space for it to fit. Bam. Perfect. No problem. Blues tie the game. Just beyond the halfway point, though. Hope and optimism. It's alive, but not for long. But still, the Blues turn it over in their own zone. Sean Corelli down low finds Joachim Nordstrom in front, who takes his time to settle it down. He has all the time in the world to settle it down. Beats Binnington 5-hole yet again, and the Bruins have the lead. But as I mentioned, it would not last. Vladimir Tarasenko ties this game. Now, Mike Milbury on the intermission panel shockingly pointed this out, and I say shockingly because it was correct. Mike Milbury does get things right from time to time. I know, the internet couldn't possibly believe it, but Brad Marchand, the bottom line is Charlie Coyle pinches in the zone. Marchand covers for him and does so incorrectly. He's on the right-hand side, and for whatever reason, Marchand chooses to go all the way over to the left and help support defense there, leaving Jaden Schwartz wide open down the left-hand side. Tarasenko gets by Marchand, ends up being just Chara back there. Tarasenko to Schwartz, takes the shot, rebound. Tarasenko's there. Chara makes a great play to get a stick on it, but Tarasenko finds the puck again from there, beats Rask, who was down, and ties up this game at 2 goals apiece. And from here, we have a turning point. Now, while I don't have to go on a rant about officiating, and obviously there were some moments from game one that were worth talking about, whether it be, certain kind of weaker calls, like there were some weak trips. Some people argue there was weak hooks. You have Sammy Blais essentially falling into David Krejci and drawing a penalty, which wasn't intentional. And again, I'm still not upset that was called. I mean, in real time, yeah, it looked like Krejci headshotted him. But again, that is what it is. Of course, you had people pissed that David Perron's stick got slashed in half without a call. You have the Torrey Krug incidents. And then you have this, which might be the biggest talking point of the game. Oskar Sundqvist boards Matt Grzelcyk, perhaps subjectively, or at least that was the opinion on Twitter, due to Grizz kind of awkwardly falling into the boards. He was, going down the left-hand corner there, so he's looking over here trying to clear out the puck, and he just awkwardly turns, and Sundqvist ends up hitting him. And it did get called. 2-minute penalty. Grzelcyk's hurt. Concussion, very likely. Should it have been a major? Who the hell knows, man? And that's the way it goes. If you're expecting me to sit here and be like, this is bullshit, the refs, the NHL. I've preached this the entire postseason. I preached it in the preview video. I preached it in the last video. I've been preaching it on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever the hell people will listen. The call was the call. There's no point in getting mad about it. There's no point in trying to say that there's bias against the Bruins. If you're a Blues fan, oh, well, the Bruins have had more power plays. Yeah, guess what? Odds are more teams often. How often are power plays equal? Let's see. Who had the most power plays in the league? Did they have the same amount of power plays as the team that had the least amount of power plays? Probably not. My point being, of course, there's no point. It's easier to just, even if it's a rough pill to swallow, accept it and move on. And like I said, it was at least called. As a Bruins fan, I'm happy there was a penalty at least, even though they weren't able to take advantage of it. And that was a big problem for the Bruins in this game, was their lack of efficiency, just in general, but especially on the power play. I mean, again, earlier in the period, too, the Bruins, the refs missed a slam dunk call that should have been too many men on the Bruins. It is what it is. We should be used to this by now. The playoffs have been going on for almost 2 months. You just got to accept it for what it is. Should it have been a major? I don't know. Will there be a suspension? Probably not. Should there be a suspension? I don't know. It was what it was, though. The unfortunate thing, of course, is that Matt Grzelcyk ends up being injured. That knocks the Bruins down to 5 men, and that would have an extreme effect on the rest of the game. However, the score would not change throughout the rest of the game. The only real notable things now, of course, throughout the second and third period, both teams had chances. That's to be expected. That's obvious. Both goalies getting the job done. The Blues getting the better of it, as we'll talk about with the final stats. But in the second period, the only real things to note, Connor Clifton goes to the box on another spin the wheel, see what happens type of tripping call. Joel Edmondson or interference, I should say. Joel Edmondson goes to the box for tripping DeBrusk. Although, if you believe that nerd, Edmondson's never done anything wrong in his life. I have never seen a player complain more than Joel Edmondson when he takes a penalty. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't understand it, but according to him, he's never done anything wrong. Of course, you have Blues fans on Twitter saying it was a dive, but I tend not to listen to those type of people, just like I don't listen to the Bruins fans that are like, everything's, the Bruins got screwed in this game for this reason, it should have been a major, whatever. Again, you try to ignore the very vocal, low IQ members, of which I've been called one of them for Bruins fans, even though I feel like I'm relatively fair and even in these assessments, but what are you going to do? But yeah, DeBrusk draws the trip or whatever, or gets tripped, call it what you will. Nothing happened as a result. Connor Clifton goes to the box, double minor high sticking, went for a stick lift, slapped Bozak in the mouth. That's a penalty. That's a penalty. Although, funny enough, there was a penalty later on, I believe it was in the third period, where Braden Shen swings around. He goes for a stick lift, misses, swings around, and chops Noel Acciari's stick. Although it looked like Acciari's stick might have been breaking on a shot. Anyway, it's funny because I had some Blues fans, you know who you are, more than likely, especially if you follow me on Twitter and watch this, but saying that, he didn't mean to, which, boy, then can Connor Clifton not go to the box for a double minor high stick? He didn't mean to draw blood. He tried to stick lift him. Oh, God, the arguments are great. But, yeah, I mean, the only real thing to point out, again, strong efforts from Rask. Someone like Joachim Nordstrom, the fourth line in general for the Bruins, deserve all the praise in the world. Joachim Nordstrom had his own Gregory Campbell moments in the second period with a couple of blocked shots. But we do go to overtime. Mercifully, we go to overtime. And I say that because the Bruins were very much gassed, which we'll talk about more in a second. Because in overtime, bottom line is the Blues dominate. The Bruins failed to clear the zone. I think it was Carlo, which I don't want to say for sure. I think it was Carlo who had a chance to get it out, didn't. The Bruins ended up taking a tripping call to kind of stop what was not quite a breakaway, but a really good quality scoring chance for the Blues. They maintain possession. Ryan O'Reilly comes on as the extra attacker, sets up, of all people, Carl Gunnarsson, who blasts one from the point and buries it. Ball game. The Blues win 3-2, and again, win their first ever Stanley Cup Finals game. The bottom line is this. The rust that people thought we would see for the Bruins in Game 1, that showed up tonight. They were absolutely gassed down the stretch. You have to factor in, of course, the loss of Matt Grzelcyk, resulting in the Bruins playing with 5 defensemen, and the St. Louis Blues' physical style. They out-hit the Bruins 50-31. That absolutely played a factor. And down the stretch in the third period, the Bruins are kind of lucky just to get to overtime. They had chances. Bergeron in front is one that really stands out, but they had chances. The Blues probably should have ended it. And by the time the overtime rolled around, you would have liked to have thought you'd see a little bit more of an inspired Bruins team with a little bit more gas in the tank. They didn't get a shot off in this overtime. It lasted about 4 minutes. They were only in the blue zone with possession for like 4 seconds or something like that. It was just pure domination. And I said this on Twitter after the game. Game 1, the better team won. Game 2, the better team won. It really is as simple as that. The Blues, I mean, outshot the Bruins 37-23 in this game. They had more high percentage chances, more slot shots, rush chances, more zone time in general. And the issue, like I mentioned, is, efficiency. The Bruins just didn't have it. The Blues had double the turnovers that the Bruins did. The Bruins didn't do anything with it. I mean, the Blues deserve to win. What more is there to say? Again, I'm not going to sit here and blame the officiating or whatever. Blues were the better team. So for the Blues moving forward, again, I don't want to act like I'm shortchanging the Blues, but obviously I have more to say about my team and the losing team. But, I mean, again, what more can be said? They took a game on the road in the Stanley Cup final in the first 2 games. That is a gigantic momentum change for them as they head back home for games 3 and 4. Had they won game 1, lost game 2, a little bit of a different dynamic. They're still happy, of course, that they won, but you win game 2, now you're going home. You're already feeling good, then you get in front of what's going to be a very loud crowd. Not to say, of course, that loud crowds dictate or, translate into wins, as you can ask the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Carolina Hurricanes, but it's still a big thing for the sake of momentum. The loss of Robert Thomas and Vince Dunn didn't overly faze them. Binnington overcame a shaky start, allowing those 2 5-hole goals. And bottom line, man, Vladimir Tarasenko playing some of the best hockey of his career. Had an injury scare in the second period, but he was fine. And it's still crazy to think that, well, number one, not only the amount of former Leafs on this team, because anytime you mention Carl Gunnarsson, the Maple Leafs have to come up, but Gunnarsson would not have been playing in this game had it not been for Vince Dunn not being good to go. And as far as the other injury, I can't say that Robbie Fabry was a terrible replacement for Robert Thomas. The Blues do have some damn good depth up front. I mean, everything's looking good for them. You have all the reason in the world as a Blues fan to be very excited for Game 3 on Saturday. And, of course, as a Bruins fan, you're going to be a little bit more nervous. And for the Bruins, outside of the fourth line, who, again, were tremendous. I mean, what Nordstrom, Corrali, what those guys bring to this team right now. And I don't want to overlook Noel Acciari or Chris Wagner for when he was healthy. But what they've provided, they have been the Bruins' best line through 2 games. And that, it's nice to have your fourth line be that good and that reliable, but it's also scary when you have some of the other talent that you have on this team. And don't get me wrong, there were moments. Despite being outshot, outhit, and generally outplayed, the Bruins had their moments. It was no different than the Blues in Game 1. The Blues absolutely could have won in Game 1. Make no mistake about that whatsoever, but they didn't. Same thing for the Bruins here. They absolutely could have won, but they did not. Despite the goal from Charlie Coyle, the third line just didn't have the same spark. Plus minus isn't the best stat in the world, but Mojo, Heinen, and Coyle were all game low -2, which is kind of brutal. And again, they just didn't have the same spark. Still a little bit physical, at least from Heinen. Mojo just kind of didn't get the same space and the same passing opportunities. Again, he has unreal vision, and it just wasn't quite there tonight. And honestly, it's the same story for the top 6, if you're going to point that out. It just hasn't been there. DeBrusk, Krejci, and Coyle. DeBrusk did have the assist tonight on Coyle's goal. Of course, a mix of the lines there, but it was on the power play. I don't know what to say either about the top line. And in particular, Brad Marchand, who has to be hurt. I simply refuse to believe he is this far off of his game at this time. We've talked about, especially in the last video, we talked about David Pastrnak and his struggles, mainly with puck possession throughout the playoffs. Is he at 100%? Of course, he dealt with the injury from last February, I believe. Maybe it was January, where he fell and missed some time. And then Marchand, of course, had the concerns leading up to this that he was potentially hurt, and that top line just doesn't have it. Now, the bright spot for the Bruins and, what they have to do moving forward, simply execute. And if you look at this, the top line isn't exactly clicking. They won Game 1. Top line isn't exactly clicking. They nearly won Game 2. The Blues were the better team, but just like I said, how the Blues could have snuck away with a victory in Game 1, the Bruins could have snuck away with a victory here in Game 2, while, really everyone outside of the fourth line was struggling, and they were down to 5 defensemen. It's a really, really close series that could go either way. So if the Bruins are able to get their game going a little bit more, things should get that much more interesting. Now, the big question, I'd suppose, too, is heading into the next game, the state of Matt Grzelcyk. He ended up going to the hospital after the game and having some tests done. He has to have a concussion. He has to. I don't see how he doesn't. And with Kevin Miller still not being good to go, although that was at the beginning of the series, maybe Kevin Miller is good to go now, which certainly his physical style would be right at home with how this series has gone thus far. It's more likely going to be Steven Kampfer or John Moore, and after Kampfer's performance in the last appearance that he had in the playoffs, I would not be surprised to see it be him. Overall, I'll say this. I don't think anyone predicted that this series would be a sweep, nor would you have if you were in your right mind. The series is far from over, but for now, advantage St. Louis through 2 games. Again, you win, now you get to go home. The only thing I can say as a Bruins fan is that I am thankful that there's an extra day's worth of rest due to travel to get this team hopefully closer to 100%, work out some kinks. I think as much as it's going to benefit the Blues going home, it's a huge thing for the Bruins to have that extra day off, especially while they figure out what the lineup is going to be. For now, though, that will just about do it. Let me know, guys, what you thought of the game down in the comments below as far as anything that we discussed here, something that I might have missed from the game. But like I said, I feel like in general I'm relatively fair. And again, there's no denying the Blues deserve to win. They absolutely have momentum right now. Still excited for Game 3, though. Not saying I'm having fun. And again, I said that before this series started. It's not fun to watch your team in a championship game or a championship series. Not fun whatsoever. No matter how much a Boston team's won lately, it's not fun. Saturday is going to be very stressful for me. Liverpool in the Champions League final, then the Bruins Game 3 in St. Louis. That's not going to be a fun day. It's going to be very, very stressful. And I can't say that I'm looking forward to it, really. That'd be a bit of a lie. But we are done here for now again. I look forward to any conversation down in the comments below. If you would, please leave a like on the video. Greatly appreciated, as, of course, YouTube's new changes to the algorithm. It's, what a pain in the ass. But I thank you guys. I will see you after Game 3, probably before that, because it's not like, videos are going to stop anytime soon. But in terms of hockey talk, I'll see you after Game 3, where I'm not going to say it this time, but not going to hope that I'm in a better mood, where, damn it, I will be in a better mood, because the Bruins are going to win. Call them my shot. I'm kidding. I'm nervous as hell.